Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Marina. I'm a lash tech based in Toronto, Canada, and I like making lashing videos. Today we are going to be doing a strip lash look tutorial. I have been really practicing this set, so I wanted to come back and do an updated version of this set. But like I say in all my videos, everything I'm sharing with you guys is extremely kind of catered to like what works for me. So if the techniques and methods don't work for you, please go out there and learn from other avenues. But I'm here to provide certain techniques and methods that I like, and hopefully I can help you guys in the long run. So today we are going to do the strip lash look. Basically, it's mimicking what falsies would look like, but in lash extensions. So the first thing that I have noticed that really helps me is really mapping out the spikes first, and then we're gonna go and fill in with the base after we kind of place and map out where the spikes are gonna be. This is really important because with this set, you want to achieve ultimate symmetry. I believe that symmetry is so important with strip lash look because you're going to have a certain amount of spikes. You're going to want the spikes to go a certain way, and you don't want anything looking lopsided because it is a strip lash look. This is a very particular look that has a lot of aspects to it that you're going to have to really focus on and try to take your time when you're doing this set. I do find that even though this was a hybrid set, it took me about 3 hours because I'm trying to really hone down and make sure that both sides are looking the same. And in order for me to do that, I have to really take my time, measure out where I'm putting these spikes, where I'm putting these bases, and where I'm putting the fans and the classic lashes. It all comes down to just being really detail oriented. So really recommend mapping it out firsthand. Take your time mapping it out. I did kind of speed this part up, so it might look like I'm working fast, but I made sure that her head was tilted straight. I kept going back and referring back and forth. Every time I would map out one eye, I would make sure that it was symmetrical with the other, and so on. I also used a better marker. I was having a hard time seeing, so make sure you have a good marker that's not going to smudge as well, because you want to be able to work fast when you start the lashing process and everything starts to kind of unfold. So make sure that you can have a pen that is going to be very visible, because during the process it's going to make it very difficult if you're still trying to navigate what size is what just because you can't see. So everything with this set is really meticulous. I think that what I will be doing in the future is increasing my price for this set. So right now, if you wanted a volume strip lash look, it's priced at a volume set. If you wanted a hybrid strip lash look, it's like basically at a hybrid set. But because this actually does take a long time, I'm gonna probably increase my price and switch up my menu a little bit. But here you can see I am applying the spikes first, and if you stay tuned, I'm gonna have a few close-ups that you can see how I'm really applying them. But mainly what I tried to focus on is directional placement when it comes to the spikes and where on the lash layer I am going to be applying this on. So before, when I was beginning and I was practicing the strip lash look, I didn't really lash in layers. I just kind of placed the spike wherever I wanted to that would be symmetrical to the other side. What happens if you put a spike on the bottom layer or the middle layer only, and you neglect to put any on the top layer? The spike gets lost within the set and also can create a lot of asymmetrical an asymmetrical result basically at the end, so they don't look the same. And because this is a strip lash look, you want to make sure that the spikes are super prominent. So in order to do that, I always recommend going a size up. A curl up and 3 sizes up. So, you can go 2 sizes as well. It's not that big of a deal, but I prefer to go 3 millimeters up from the base just so that they're very prominent. That's how I like it. But if you want to go lower, just make sure that the fans that you are creating are thin so that they don't get lost within your thick fans. So here you can see I am very meticulous about which way the spike is going. I want to make sure that it's leaning a little towards the inner corner, a little bit up to really open up the eye. This is really important in terms of glue, you know, making sure that the humidity in your room and the temperature is on point, because directional placement relies heavily on how your glue is going to dry. Make sure that it's going to dry at a fast enough rate that when you apply it, you can kind of just place it and it'll dry according to where you applied this spike. If you have a little bit of space to let the glue kind of adhere and dry, you can still have a way to direct the spike by using your tweezer after applying and leaning it to one side, holding it there, and then letting it dry. I just find for myself that when the glue is drying a little too slow, even if you have it in a certain direction that you want, over time when you're isolating, because it's not fully cured yet, your lash extension might start to actually dry a little bit to the side when you are isolating. So just make sure that your humidity is there. Or what I would recommend is after you apply the spike, nano mist it with the mister, just so that you know that it's like fully dried and fully cured and it's not going to move from the direction that you're trying to angle it on. So that's really important, because like if your spikes are going and leaning a different direction, your look is just going to be thrown off and it's not going to look as clean. This is something I really had to experiment with, and through trial and error, this is how I figured it out. So basically how I mapped out my spikes is I have the top layer and the middle layer. Now, not everybody has 3 layers, and that can get really tricky when you are trying to make the strip lash look. So if they don't have another layer in between the bottom and the top layer, I would recommend just focusing on the top layer and using other spikes to directionally place them so that you're creating a darker spike. Now, I have seen a lot of people recommend using 0.07 or 0.05 for the spikes, and then really light fans or a hybrid set at the base so that the spikes kind of show through. I don't know why, but I actually prefer using 0.03 for my spikes, because I think that I can grab more and make the lash spike a lot darker and more dense than I would with a 0.05 spike, because 0.05 you can only pick up so much until you're grabbing too much, and if you grab too much, then you know it gets a little heavy for the natural eyelash. So I use 0.03 and then I layer another spike right underneath that first spike on the top layer. So I use the middle layer and the top layer so that the spike becomes more dark, and it makes it look like there's one large spike. Even if they're not directionally placed like perfectly one underneath each other, you can still see that that is a spike and it is prominent, and it's not too messy if you can get that directional placement on point. Leave the bottom base alone. Only add fans or classic lashes. I always recommend just putting a fan underneath every single spike. Like I said in my other videos, it acts as a shelf, really kind of pushing that spike up. Right now it's just being fast forwarded because I'm just filling in the fans and the classic lashes for the base. I did map out what lengths I'm using for the base so that I can still gauge the symmetrical look that I'm going for. Every so often I do recommend using your spoolie and just kind of brushing through, because as you isolate, you're pushing the neighboring lashes to the side, so you can kind of get skewed on where your spikes and your bases and the lengths are supposed to go. So just kind of, you know, every so often brush it, mist it, do what you need to do to kind of really hone down on that symmetry. But these are just some things that I really recommend and things that have definitely helped me. It's just so that you can see these spikes, because not all the time I find that when I see people do like volume strip lash looks, especially, the spikes get lost. That's probably because your base is way too thick and your spike is way too thin, and you just can't see that contrast. So the main focus is the spikes, so try to kind of keep the base on the lighter side. Also, another thing, as you can see here, the base is a C curl and then my spikes are CC curl. So if you're using like a D curl, you want to go DD curl. You always want to make sure that the spikes is a one curl up, because it just like makes it more prominent. I mentioned this in the beginning of the video, but I really want to emphasize that you don't always have to do that. I have a lot of wispy sets that I've worked with before where I use the same curl for the base and the spikes, but I do find, and in my own like experience, going up a curl always makes it so much better, always makes it so much more prominent. So I really recommend focusing on that and trying to implement that if you're trying to create a strip lash look. It's just like a big difference. Like, it's a small step to take, but a big difference in terms of results. So I just really recommend doing it. And every so often you can use your tweezers to make sure that your spikes are still kind of layered one on top of each other. Another thing that I like to do is use a bonder or a primer to go and make the spikes a lot darker. So I take a little lip gloss applicator, disposable lip gloss applicator stick, put a little primer, put a little bonder. I use bonder because it's a little bit more tacky. So when I do that, the spikes that are part of the strip lash look, when they're layered, they kind of stick more together because of that tackiness, but it's not going to stick together like how adhesive would stick. It will still come apart, because you don't want to use adhesive to make your spikes stick together, because again, obviously your lashes are growing at different rates and therefore it can end up damaging the natural lash. So try to keep them you know, kind of tacky with the bonder, but you could also use primer if you don't have bonder as well. It works, it's just not as sticky. And I think that doing this also really makes that spike a lot more spikier rather than like an open, narrow fan. You really want to make sure that these are sharp spikes to really emphasize that strip lash look. You could also use bonder at the very end of your set too, to obviously bond the entire set so that your base is cured as well. When doing that, use a really small micro swab. Don't use a normal lip gloss applicator, because the bonder can start to make the fans look a little bit more closed and it becomes like a wet lash look. We're going for strip lash, so you still want that base to still be fluffy and dense. So use a really small micro pad or micro I don't even know what to call it, like not a cotton swab, but it is kind of like a cotton swab, and just apply the bonder that way. And at the very ends of the eyes, I did go CC curl, and I actually kept my spike at a CC curl as well, because I just think that it was still prominent enough that you can see it, and I wanted it to have like a nice little curl at the end of the eye that's not so curly, like a DD curl. Sometimes I find that it creates more of a false look, and this client wanted more of like an elegant curl, so I stuck with that. Stay tuned at the very end to see the final results. But if you guys have any questions about this set, I am so happy with how this set turned out. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. You can even DM me on Instagram and I can answer questions there, but I always try to comment back on my videos, so just leave a comment if you want. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. I post every Sunday around 6:15. If you like this video, it would help so much if you can give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks.
Something I gon' get what's meant for ya. All my love is on the line, and it's up to ya. You got friends, I got friends, but my eyes on ya. Put your pride to the side, love is life for ya. I can tell what's something I gon' get what's meant for ya. All my love is on the line, and it's up to ya. You ain't gotta worry about me playing games. I want you just as bad as you want me. You already talking with your energy. In the back of my mind, fantasize about you and me.